What if I told you that getting old doesn't actually have to be this huge burden? That maybe we were actually meant and can thrive in our older age? What if I told you that there is actually one underlying cause for pretty much all disease? Is it actually true that wheat, when milled or cracked, actually loses 90% of its nutrients within 3 days due to oxidation? Can we actually reverse or cure things like celiac disease? Well, we're going to be talking about all of this and more in this really exciting interview that I have for y'all today. Today, I'm actually interviewing Dr. Cate Shanahan. You may have heard of her, you may have not, but I guarantee you've heard of a very famous movement that she is the mother of. Hey y'all, welcome back to Grains and Grit. My name is Felicia, and on this channel, I teach you all about real whole grains, all from a biblical perspective. How am I to be milling your own grains? What are grains? What are the myths and truth surrounding grains and bread and all of those things and more? And today, that definitely lines up with what we're doing today because I'm very excited to be bringing to y'all an interview with Dr. Cate Shanahan. As I mentioned earlier, you may not have heard of her name, but you're probably familiar with her work because she is actually known as the mother of the no seed oil movement. And while this may not be your jam, trust me, it definitely has a lot to do with the things that we talk about on this channel. I had so many questions for her, especially ones that I've had hard time finding original sources for. So I was really excited to be able to talk with her. You're going to want to stick around for this interview. So a little bit about Dr. Cate is that she is a board certified family medicine physician. She's also a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and as I stated, the mother of the no seed oil movement. We dived into underlying causes of aging, what are actually the true dangers of seed oils, because like grains, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. And so we really dove into what was truth and what was fiction. And then we even talk about things like celiac disease. I asked her about the oxidation thing when milling our own grains, and just it's such a great conversation. So before we begin, do know that this is an edited interview. If you want the entire interview, that is actually for my Grainie bunch. So if you are part of my Grainie bunch, just sign into your member portal to see this extended interview edition there. And if you want to check out the Grainie bunch, what all that's about, then you can check out this link right here. So let's get started, y'all. Dr. Cate, it's a privilege and honor to interview you today. And I'm thrilled to actually be talking to a biochemist, doctor, nutrition expert. I have a lot of questions, a lot of things that I'm looking forward to asking you.
Awesome. I love it, Felicia. And thank you so much for the opportunity to meet yourself and your audience.
Well, first of all, so looking over your Instagram profile, the first thing that pops up is that you were the mother of the no seed oil movement. And as I confessed to you before recording, that I've heard of the no seed oil movement, unaware of you. Right off the bat, I do want to talk about this because anyone who follows my channel, and I teach about home milling and real whole grains. Whenever I first heard of like the no seed oil movement, I'm a little leery of it because I'm like, okay, what all are they throwing out the baby with the bathwater? Because grains are seeds. People don't associate grains as seeds. So let's just start off. Simple question. What are seed oils, and are all seed oils to blame for health issues today, or just some of them?
Right. So when we're talking about like the bad seed oils, I've defined the ones that are bad by my criteria, and I call them the Hateful Eight. And I made up that name because I want people to know that there are 8 of them, and also to think of them as a group. And I don't really love the term seed oils either, but these Hateful Eight, they all do come from seeds. And the reason I don't like the term seed oils is because it's not really the right term, right? Because like you said, there's a lot of healthy seeds and there's a lot of healthy seed oils. So the Hateful Eight are as follows: corn, canola, cottonseed, and I've divided them up to kind of maybe make it easier to remember, like I got those 3 C's. Now we have 3 S's: soy, sunflower, safflower. And then I have 2 more, which is kind of like the sometimes Y of vowels, like A, E, I, O, U, sometimes Y. So the 2 more are grapeseed and rice bran. Now, those are distinct from all other seed oils out there because of 2 things.
Please explain to us why these in particular are actually not good for us.
There's a lot of talk about processed food, but what there really should be, and I'd like to redirect this whole conversation every chance I get, I'm going to take it. We should talk about processing itself, not processed food, because the way that it's currently defined is there actually is no definition at all whatsoever. It's totally arbitrary, and the powers that be have taken it upon themselves to just say, trust us, this stuff's processed food. They've given us no clear rubric, no yardstick to measure how. So it's the processing itself. So we need to be talking about the processing itself, which explains everything. So the seed oils that came from these 8 seeds, the ones in the food supply, tend to be refined, bleached, and deodorized, meaning they're processed. They are not what nature made. They were extracted from the seed in a non-biologically respectful way, in a way that actually destroys the important chemistry that nature put into the seeds by removing antioxidants, removing a lot of vitamins. And it's harsh. It's a harsh process. It was not designed for human health. It was designed actually for automobiles. This is kind of the history of, we don't even know why we're eating soy oil. Well, we should. Doctors should. When I say we, I don't mean to shame you guys, y'all. I mean, doctors really should know. And so should dietitians, because they're the ones out there saying, promoting these oils as heart healthy. But they were actually originally refined. Soy oil was originally fostered by Henry Ford as part of a movement called the Pharmacomergic movement, which was where industry was going to capitalize on America's great farmland and our productive farms. And they were like, well, soybeans create a lot of oil, and Henry Ford needed a lot of oil for lubrication of his machines. And so they extracted it from soybeans. And that was like the original way of creating soy oil. That it was not part of any culinary tradition. We know that soybeans themselves were, but to extract the oil particularly in this way, that was novel, and it was for cars. So it did not matter. The biological consequences didn't matter. It wasn't going to be eaten. This is a real dirty secret of the edible oil industry. So they call themselves edible oils. That's kind of like the blanket term. And that includes all the edible oils, even olive oil and stuff. But the dirty secret is that these refined, bleached, deodorized seed oils, because of the chemistry of the seed oils, they were not originally intended for human consumption. And then it was kind of like reverse engineered. So, and what I mean by that is, okay, so we had this soy oil that was not fit for human consumption. What do we got to do now so we can feed it to people? Like, that was the question. What do we got to do so that we can feed it to people? Meaning that it's not so disgusting that they'll never buy it again if they happen to buy a bottle, right? That's what the question was. There was no concern for health and safety. Like, it was just assumed that people would somehow metabolize it. And there was no consideration for this by the industry. But the other factor is that these seeds are all high in a kind of fatty acid that is the problem. And that is called polyunsaturated fatty acids, right? You've heard of saturated fat in butter, monounsaturated fat in olive oil. Well, we got the polyunsaturates that are in high proportion in these 8 seed oils that I've identified, that when you refine, bleach, and deodorize and harshly process them, what you get is a bottle of very low nutrition, very unstable chemicals that are already starting to form toxins at a slow rate. And we accelerate that toxin formation when we open them because of oxygen in the air reacting with those unstable polyunsaturated fatty acid molecules. And so it's a bad combination because the oils have had all of their stabilizing antioxidants and vitamins with antioxidant properties removed. Then you have all these polyunsaturates exposed to air, and it's just a spontaneous reaction. You cannot stop it now, but you can accelerate it by heating it and exposing it to certain ions, certain metals, like particularly iron in our cooking, in our cookware, and in meats. It's just horribly bad because what happens is you get rapid formation of toxic substances of all kinds. And one of the most well-known are the aldehydes. And one of the aldehydes that form in, for example, fast food French fries, or when you pan fry chicken at home, is called crotonaldehyde, which is the very same aldehyde that makes cigarette smoke carcinogenic. So I'm talking about like serious toxins, not like, yes, sure, broccoli has something in it that, if you eat 100 pounds of broccoli every week, that compound could end up being bad for you. This is not that. This is not theoretical. These are measured. Scientists have measured them. There's a Dr. Martin Grutfeld who I'm working on a couple papers with right now. But he's said he was the one that measured that statistic, that created that statistic that I'm quoting. And you may have seen, if you've seen that meme of French fries, a French fry container with cigarettes in them, there is a 1-to-1 correlation of the amount of these toxic aldehydes in fast food French fries. He measured this. His team went to a popular fast food chain, and he couldn't tell me which one, but he says it's one you've heard of. And he measured the aldehydes in there, and he said it is equivalent to the amount of aldehydes you get from smoking a cigarette. Like it's a 1-to-1 correlation.
So, and just to make sure, aldehyde is a carcinogen.
Yes. So not all aldehydes are. There's a lot of aldehydes. Chemistry's, its own little world of details. But this particular aldehyde that he measured, a family of aldehydes called the alpha beta unsaturated aldehydes, is the most dangerous. And the seed oils form them like in copious quantities, and it's worse the longer they're heated, the older the oils are, the more that the food gets reheated, right? So even if you didn't, say like fry it in something that was heated for very long, if you reheat it again, that's kind of extra bad because you accelerated the formation of these reactions, and they've kind of been going on now a little faster than they were. Now you're heating it again and you're sort of supercharging it.
So there were two major things that were like for me. One being, I totally agree. And it's interesting how this is this one common theme across multiple different types of food groups. And that is, we should be asking, how is it being processed? Because I teach all about, whole milling, real whole grains. Technically, milling the wheat is a form of processing. We are processing the wheat and baking bread. I mean, it's not literally like off the vine or whatever, eating, if you do anything to it, it is a type of processing. So processing food in and of itself is not necessarily evil and unhealthy, but we have different ways of doing it now, thanks to modern technology and everything like that. And so the fact that, things are highly processed or highly refined, which these seed oils, which kind of basically tells me that the only reason we even have these seed oils is because of modern technology, and not like our ancestors would not have been doing this because it would not have been possible.
They did used to use flax seeds in a wedge press made out of wood, and there was a wedge inside something shaped like a V-shaped wood container. And you would just basically use a mallet and go bonk, bonk, bonk a few times, get a couple of drops of the flax oil. That's also how they extracted sunflower oil. That is a totally gentle process and totally different. And you preserve all the goodness that nature put into the seed when you do that. It was fresh. And that makes all the difference, Felicia. And that is actually why I reached out to you, because I was like, oh, you don't just talk about using whole grains or sourdough. You actually talk about milling it yourself. And that makes all the difference because of time and freshness. So the other
Yeah.
variable that creates these oxidation is time.
You had said something that really piqued my interest because, as you mentioned, I'm all about, teaching real whole grains, but milling them yourselves. And one of the main reasons I say that is because of oxidation. As soon as that wheat berry is cracked or it's sprouted, oxidation starts to occur. You start losing nutrients due to oxidation. But you actually kind of took that a step further and stated that oxidation in and of itself is a big enemy of our health because it actually turns nutrients into toxins. Oxidation is what ages us, which I think any woman knows. It's why they put antioxidants in all the skincare stuff, but it makes us sick and also drives food allergies like the wheat allergies and celiac disease. So please explain, how does oxidation turn nutrients into toxins? And does this apply to all foods or just certain ones? And the reason why I ask that one is because, when you see bananas turn black or brown, that's oxidizing. But at least as far as I know, that makes the best banana bread. And I would not say that that in of itself is a toxin. So this is applied to all foods, or, is it specific ones that it's worse?
Yeah, so you said it though, like it applies to all foods, but there are specific ones that are worse, and there's others where it's almost inconsequential.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do just with the fundamental chemistry. So, what is oxidation? Well, oxygen in the air is a molecule, and it reacts with stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so rust is an example of an oxidation reaction that we've all seen. And it's certainly not good for your engine, your bicycle chain, your car. Oxidation it's a huge deal for life on Earth. And that's why our bodies have specialized enzymes to fight it and stop it and slow it down. They literally trap oxygen in a high energy state. So the more that we have these kinds of toxins that are the result of oxidation reactions, the more our body is stressed in this way from oxygen. And the word for this kind of stress, physiologic stress, is called oxidative stress. But it's a chemical term. Doctors don't learn much about it, but we
Mm-hmm.
do see the term all the time when we're looking at, well, what is the root cause of this disease or that disease? Like it is the root cause of why we look older as we age, or it's a huge part of a root cause. It's the root cause of every disease there is. It's the root cause of all these age-related dementias, the root cause of a lot of the neurodevelopmental problems that children are being diagnosed with now, because there's so many more seed oils in the food supply than there were. So the consequences are everywhere in doctors' medical offices and everywhere in families, and not these connections are not made. The connections are not made to oxidation, and the most pro-oxidative thing in the food supply is the seed oils. So do we worry about things like banana bread? Well, no. So like those kind of color changes to brown, um, those are kind of like the same kind of reactions that we would get with cooking. Like when you bake your bread, it gets a brown. Like those kinds of browning reactions, those do produce things that our body really can't use. But we have liver enzymes and kidney enzymes and a whole bunch of detoxification systems to deal with those, right? Our body is ready for some of these toxins, right? What?
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole world has toxins. Oxygen itself is a toxin, right? Because I
Yeah.
just said oxygen molecules, they can go wild in your cells and start destroying things. And our body is ready for that. We have antioxidants, we have antioxidant enzymes that our bodies make from scratch. Those are the most important ones that you can't just eat in a capsule or supplement with. Those are the most
Mm-hmm.
important ones. We have to have a healthy diet to make those. But our body is ready for this. So we're okay with the regular stuff, but we're not okay with these processed foods, the processed ingredients. And the seed oils are the worst of the worst. But there's three that I like people to know about so they can understand that these are the things that drive disease in the food supply. and the seed oils being the biggest and the worst. But the second is right up your alley. It's the refined flours. So
Mm-hmm.
pre-milled and then refined to make them just white and even less nutrition. Those along with the refined sugars, I put them in the same category because they essentially have the same kind of cause the same kind of stresses within our bodies. Those are the things that they cause our body to not control oxidation.
So before we continue on with this interview, you may have started to pick up a theme of how important it is that we should be milling our own grains because, like seed oils and other things, what we're given in the grocery store is usually just not real. That flour in the store is fake. That flour in the store is dead. All the nutrients pretty much have been completely removed from it. And then especially if you're buying the bread in the store from that, I mean, it's just bad. No wonder people have issues. That's why I advocate milling your own grains and consuming real whole grains yourself, especially milling your own wheat and baking that delicious bread at home. And so step one to that is, of course, getting some kind of grain mill so you can grind your own grains. And step two is getting the wheat. And that is where I introduce today's sponsor, which is 4 Generations Organic Farms, because they are my go-to place for my hard red and hard white wheat berries. And newest of all is the new, quote, purple wheat Heartwell, which is higher in antioxidants, and I've done videos all about that. So the great thing about 4 Generations Organic Farms is, of course, they are organic farmers. They are also regenerative farmers, meaning that they're taking care of their soil, which the better your soil is, the more nutritious your actual plant is. So these wheat berries are packed with as much nutrition as possible, and then they are clean wheat berries that are shipped straight to your house. If you order them by the buckets, they come with oxygen absorbers. They are sealed buckets, ready to be stored, no problem. They even offer free shipping, which is amazing because wheat berries are super heavy. And another thing about shopping with 4 Generations is you are supporting our small farmers here in the good old US of A. So be sure to check them out. Just go to grainsandgrit.com/4generations. Use code grainsandgrit for 10% off your first order. And thank you so much to 4 Generations Organic Farms for sponsoring this video.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, so my brain was just like firing so much of like connecting the dots when you were telling me this, because this truly shows the incredible design. So those who are familiar with my channel, I'm a Bible believing Christian, so I do believe God created the world 6 little days, 6,000 years ago. But with that, our bodies were designed to handle oxidation. That's going to happen. We know we're going to get old. It's just going to happen. You can't, sorry guys, if you were here to find out if you there was some magic pill or something that you could avoid to not get old. You're going to get old. You're going to get wrinkles. And that is a natural process that our bodies have. But what you were telling me and explaining was that we already have in our bodies, and also what we can get from real foods are enzymes and things like that to actually help and basically balance out this oxidation process where it can be toxic. And another thing that was incredible to me is because you mentioned how like refined flour is a problem. And for me, I've talked so much about, really mention vitamin E, and wheat germ has the highest amount of vitamin E in it than any other food. And vitamin E is a powerful antioxidant. And so for the white flour, especially, no vitamin E, because the brain and germ have been removed. That vitamin E is found in the germ of the wheat berry. So we're removing, the antioxidants from our wheat and probably other grains as well to create that white flour. And then on top of that, we're then coating and consuming all of these highly refined seed oils. You add on the sugar, you add on the white flour, and it's just overloading our bodies, where what we have, the antioxidants that we have, maybe that we're getting from some of the good food, it's just now too much. And that's what's causing us, where our bodies are freaking out, why we look older maybe than what we are, and getting sick. That basically where now it's just unbalanced.
That is 100% correct. That is chemistry you were describing. So yeah, absolutely. We overwhelm by just eating foods where certain things have been removed, and this has been removed, and that's been removed to improve the shelf life, right? Reason that they use white flour is because it has a longer shelf life. Just about 70% of the average person's calories come from those big 3 bad refined ingredients where a lot or most or all of the nutrition has been removed. 70% of the average person's daily calories. That leaves hardly any space for the real food that has the nutrition that we need. So there's no way our bodies are going to be able to properly deal with the oxygen anymore. And we are all oxidizing at a premature rate. And what does that do? Well, it does actually make us look a little bit older. But the worst thing is that it makes us feel old, and it gives us age-related diseases. Sure, we get like a little bit short, we lose some bone density, we lose some muscle mass. The way our fat is distributed changes, and it does make us look older. We'll get some wrinkles if we're out in the sun a lot, especially. Our hair might go gray, but we are a bundle. We're supposed to kind of be a bundle of energy, a little bit slowed down from the way it was when we were, 6 or 20. But, it's not dramatically different the way it is now. And we just think it's normal.
So it's amazing how, yes, oxidation is going to happen. You're going to get old, but maybe the way, maybe we're not getting old the way that we should be getting old.
It's not just the aging process that is showing the signs of these disruptions. It is the reproductive process itself. Our pregnancies are affected. We are having preeclampsia during pregnancy is due to oxidative stress. The medical science doesn't understand this is all oxidative stress. They should be telling women, don't eat cereals, whatever it is, and try to, avoid the other 2 processed food ingredients and eat whole foods. That would be the cure for preeclampsia.
Wow, I would like to put a pin on that one. I've been pregnant many times, so large family. And that's very interesting because all that I knew about preeclampsia is that it's life-threatening. I understand it is a serious thing, but it was related to blood pressure, or maybe that was just the way that they would monitor it. But like, that's all I knew is like, just, that's why we check, like any pregnant woman knows why they check your blood pressure every time, you go to an appointment, because that is one of the indicators of preeclampsia. So that's fascinating to me. Like, just eat real food. There are some things I would like to ask you about, because I think you are the person to ask, because there are certain things that I've had a difficult time finding actual scientific type studies or information. Like, so first of all, as far as oxidation goes, like vitamin E, I have typically heard that, especially with wheat, when you mill the wheat, how like within 3 days, 90% of the nutrients have been oxidized, especially like the vitamin E is usually the first to go. With you being your biochemist, medical type background, is that actually true? Does it take longer for these things to oxidize? Does it just depend on what's being oxidized? What is your take on that? Like how long it actually takes to oxidize?
So that process is noticeably started by 3 days, and it's pretty much, there's a lot of things, there's like almost nothing left after 3 months, right? But it's a process. It takes time. And there's different forms of oxidation. So like what we call oxidation, I mean, you're correct. When you slice an apple, that browning, that is an oxidation reaction. But it's a different one, and it doesn't create so many of these toxins. So it depends what's oxidizing is exactly how bad it's going to be for you. But getting back to grains, like the oils and things that oxidize in there, those are the bad ones, because those are the polyunsaturates in there that are in the wheat berry itself. The fatty acid composition of, there's not a lot of fat in there, but a lot of the fat that is there is the polyunsaturates. But, fortunately, there's not a lot of fat there. So it's not as bad as one of the Hateful 8 oils, right? Even rancid wheat flour or whatever you have that's laying around and maybe you don't even notice it's rancid, the amount of bad is less than the things that you make with the Hateful foods, the Hateful 8 oils themselves, and food that's made with the Hateful 8 oils. Is there a citation for this? No, this is based on chemistry, right? So it's just like, once you understand the principles, then you can answer a lot of these things. And you can certainly look up, they have done studies like how much oxidation occurs and how to stall the oxidation. That's one of the things that they do. So, but that's how I got those like kind of 3 time points. Like at 3 days, there's noticeable oxidation occurring, like not negligible amounts that are nothing. There's something there. So it is better at day 1 and day 2 and early at day 3, and by 3 months is pretty much not like a lot of anything good left, really.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways is don't stress. You know,
Yeah.
you're if you have some flour lying around that you milled 3 days ago, you're not killing yourself. You know, to get the optimal maximum amount of benefits, you should be milling fresh right before you bake, so on and so forth. But, you know, for those people who might have been listening to this like, oh no, am I killing myself because I'm consuming flour I milled three,
Right.
4, or 5 days ago? No, you're not. So with that, I did want to talk about a video that you pointed me to. Now, it is an older video that you sent me. It's what is gluten intolerance and is there a cure? And I will link that below. Many years ago, I was basically told, like, as I understood celiacs before the whole anti-gluten movement, celiac disease, as far as I knew, was something that basically people were born with. You would know because they're very sick and then they're tested and be like, okay, we got to get you, your body is reacting to gluten. We got to get you off of it. And it's very, very small. But nowadays, I'm starting to see more and more people say, no, I'm celiac. But one thing that I question is because they state, like, I was fine for years. Like, I grew up, I was fine. I used to be able to eat wheat. I was fine. Oh, but now I'm celiac. So, I don't know if people are just using, if this is a semantics thing, we're calling it celiacs when it's more of a gluten insensitivity. So I kind of want to hear your opinion about the diagnosing of celiacs. I would like to hear your definition. How would you define celiac versus gluten sensitive?
So the celiac disease is not necessarily genetic, right? So,
Okay.
but there is a genetic component. So it does run in families. But the difference between celiac and a lot of the early literature said, oh, you're born with it. But because as our diets have changed unknown to medical science, they don't know what's really going on here. But we have now observed that a lot of people develop it during their life, true celiac disease during their life, even though originally, you know, back when I was in school, I was told, yes, it was that rare and it was genetic. But now it's more common because besides just the genetic tendency, there's also these people who are exposed to so much inflammation that what happens, and here's the difference, is that their immune system starts reacting to not just gluten, but the reaction between gluten, like the antibody to gluten, is similar to an antibody against your own body cells. So autoimmune disease means that your body has created antibodies against your own body's like tissues and cells, right?
Yeah.
So with gluten,
your body is confused.
What's that? Your body's confused.
Your body is confused.
Exactly. And with allergies, you have a reaction to the protein, and that can be driven by antibodies, but those antibodies are not attacking your own body's proteins, right? So the antibodies that your body makes to gluten can be different from person to person, right? And so that means that there's like a variety of different antibodies that are produced, and some of them are going to attack your own tissues. And when they do that, we call it celiac disease.
So it does sound like many things we find in the medical world is things change over time. Our diets have changed, our lifestyles have changed, and also just the way that, like, we're now kind of seeing new things. Like, I know for me, you know, for the longest time, I didn't know anyone with autism growing up. And then, like, you know, when I'm becoming an adult now, like, every kid has autism. Not every kid, but like, you're starting to hear it more. And I think the new thing was, you know, the whole gluten sensitivity, like, that's a new thing. I think now it is things like Hashimoto's and thyroid. It's like these new things keep popping up. And I definitely have my theories about that, because I don't think we've just been misdiagnosing people for years.
Right.
But that would be another tangent. So, okay. So I'm glad to know that I'm not absolutely losing it in that, or that I got wrong information about celiac. The medical field is still trying to understand and think. So people can be born with it, but also we are seeing people developing it. Celiac is still, so whether they developed or were born with it, from what you're saying, is it still doing the same thing? It's still an autoimmune response. So this actually leads to the next thing that you do talk about, I think, in some of your books, and that is the epigenetics in the realm of like the celiac, gluten sensitivity. It can apply to many, many, many things, but epigenetics is absolutely fascinating. So first of all, explain epigenetics to me like I'm 5.
Yeah, so epigenetics is a huge field, and different people describe it differently depending on what their area of interest is. With your genes actually change during your life, so that you pass on a slightly different set of genes than what you, and even if you cloned yourself during your life, your genes would have changed. And so that kind of explains a little bit about how we are seeing a lot of these new autoimmune disorders that are so much more prevalent than they used to be, including celiac.
Mhm.
Because during your life as a parent, even perhaps there were changes that occurred within your DNA. Your DNA is a molecule, but there's interactions with other molecules that can be semi-permanent on your DNA. Like there's little things like a little protein might say stay stuck on a certain part of your DNA, and that prevents certain things from happening, and it changes the way that DNA is going to function. Maybe it changes whether or not you're going to make antibodies to gluten. So what it means is that if our diets are suboptimal in our lifetimes, and then we go ahead and reproduce, right? Like, so where it might have affected the ovaries for women, or the way the testes are going to operate, so that the sperm comes out different. The DNA in there is actually slightly just tagged differently in a way that
Mhm.
is inherited, and can predispose the child to problems that neither parent had, right? Like, because one of the reasons medical science had to adopt the reality, accept the reality that celiac can't just be inherited, is because so many people were developing it who had no family history of it.
Yeah. And
So
that to me really kind of shines a light on this epigenetics type thing, because that's basically how my husband explained it to me. It's like, imagine you have genes and you can turn them on and off, like very simplistic. And like the foods that we eat, the environments that we have, even things that we put on our own body, or laundry detergent. I mean, I don't know, but like that things in our world, our environment, things that we put into our body can literally turn on or off certain things that our genetics may be predisposed to. And it may also turn them off. So celiac may run in your family, but switching over to freshly milled wheat, and being able to, and actually consuming real whole grains and whole foods, maybe that may not affect you, but it can certainly help your children, your grandchildren, and also you as well. And it was
it
very
will.
fascinating for me to hear about. But that probably also explains, testimonies that I receive where I can't, I have reactions to white flour and gluten, and where many, many people can just switch to freshly milled wheat and they're fine. There still are a few that still come to me and said, I still have problems, but I have received testimonies of people saying over time, so they really, they started incorporating whole foods and fermented foods and like healing their gut and all that. And then they were able to have, freshly milled wheat, totally fine. Where beforehand, any amount of wheat would have sent them into a fit.
And another thing that a lot of folks do when they start to making these positive changes, they eat less, chips and fried food. They eat out less. They're eating less seed oils, which are the worst, most harmful, pro-inflammatory thing in the food supply. So freeing their body of that burden of having to deal with all of that damaging oxidation and all those toxins all the time, that allows the cell to start functioning normally.
Yeah, this is fascinating, and literally, like, this has been wonderful because it's giving me the scientific backing behind many things that I've definitely already thought about and assumed, because it just makes sense. So first of all, if people didn't pay attention to anything else that we have said in this interview, the eyes glazed over, or they're on a walk and their mind started wandering, I'm speaking for myself. So if there was one main point that you really wanted to get across to someone, like you're in an elevator, you have like 1 minute to give them the most important thing you want them to take away, what would that be?
Your body wants to be healthy, but the big three toxic refined processed things in the food supply are making that very hard or even impossible. And my life's work has been to teach people that connection and to help them escape from dependence on those 3 ingredients. So that's in my books, and I have a course now. It's an 8-week course that walks people through the steps of how do you start from, if you don't know that much about cooking, how do you make your own food from scratch? How do you do it without cooking? And I walk people through the steps of that. And I've just launched it, and people are loving it. Like, so I'm so like happy
Mhm.
about that.
No, I really love it because people really need, I think, the practicality of like, okay, that's great. I believe this. Like, absolutely, I'm on board. How do I do it? So, yes. So, I'm glad you mentioned the course because I was going to ask you about it. So, with your course, I would definitely link that down below for anyone who's interested in really learning, like, okay, what does this look like? How do I cook? You know, obviously, follow me for all about freshly milled grains and home milling, but that course looks amazing. And also, I'm really excited about the books that you have. I have your book, Deep Nutrition, which looks absolutely fascinating, defining the human diet, how it supports human health, and it builds on the work of Dr. Weston Price. And then your newest one is Dark Calories, which looks really fascinating. Basically defining junk food and processed food so you can avoid them, and how it makes you fit, exactly how they're making us sick. And then also you have like fat burn fix and food rules. So I will be linking all of this down below. And I think we can check you out. Your website, drcate.com. That's Kate with a C, CATE.com. And then also you are on Instagram. Tell us your Instagram handle and YouTube.
It's all at Dr. Cate Shanahan, DRCATE Shanahan. So whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, those are the 4 places. Oh, LinkedIn. It's all at
LinkedIn.
DRCATE Shanahan. Yep.
So this has been an absolutely fascinating, wonderful interview. Again, I think the biggest takeaways, just eat real food. Thank you so much, Dr. Cate, for being here. This was a wonderful interview.
Thank you, Felicia. This has been a lot of fun chatting with you. I feel like we could talk for days.
So what'd you think, y'all? That was an amazing interview. And like, I feel like we need a part 2 because like so many more questions that I would have for her. It was a wonderful interview. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully you learned a lot. Let me know below in the comments what your biggest takeaway is. And again, if you want to actually see the extended full interview of this, because there were some details that I did edit out, that is for my Grainies. I love you guys. Thank you so very much for always supporting me each and every month with your membership. And so be sure to check that out. And again, link up here for information about our exclusive membership group, the Grainie Bunch. And if you actually want to check out other interviews that I've done, I actually highly recommend this one. This was an amazing interview that I did with Annette Reeder, the biblical nutritionist. And again, that's also one that the extended interview is in the Grainie Bunch as well, but this is also a great one here on YouTube. So be sure to check that out. And as always, thank y'all so very much for being here, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.